Hey, everybody, welcome back to Wrestling Travels Lockdown Sessions, brought to you by our good friends down in London in the old United Kingdom, Wrestle Merch Central. Please check them out online for all of your, wrestling merch. It's pretty self-explanatory. But today we're very happy, I am at least, been a long time coming. Colin Delaney, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, how are you?
Doing well. Just a little behind the scenes. I think reached out to you in the summer and we just kept missing each other, but I blame the pandemic and I'm glad that you didn't blame me. And we finally got in touch.
Well, so it's so crazy because, you would think because pandemic and lockdown and whatever, and everyone's not doing anything, but it's really just like you lose track of days and weeks and hours and just, like I remember getting this email from you and we talked back and forth and then you emailed me again. And I was like, oh my God, we never got together on a time and figured it out.
And that's the thing too. I'm like, the days go by and I'm like, I don't know whose fault it is. I'll take the blame, but if you're willing to come back on, I'm glad. It's just awesome that we caught up, and it's awesome that my green screen is working very well. So I'm glad to have you on. I want to start. We cater to fans all over the world. So, and some of the people I've interviewed are like, yeah, I got into wrestling in like 2006 was the first time. So, I want to start with you. How long have you been in the business, and for everybody to know?
So I started training in 2003.
Okay.
I had my first match in 2003. Yeah, so about 5 years before WWE came around for me.
Awesome. And who did you break in with? Where did you do your training?
So I'm from Rochester, New York, born and raised here in Rochester, and I came up at I guess it's the Upstate Professional Wrestling School. It was NWA Upstate with the trainers Rick Matrix and Hellcat Mike Rosario, but also guys like Dunn and Marcos, the Ring Crew Express were always around. Me and Brody Lee came up together. We actually backyard wrestled together before we started training together. So he was a guy who I came up with. And guys like Cloudy and Cheech and Jimmy Olsen and the Upstate New York crew. We had a pretty decent crew when I first came around.
That's all. And I had no idea. I was doing my journalistic integrity, kind of looking stuff up, but saw like a post-match interview of you, maybe 2017, 18, with the Bludgeon Brothers, with Eric and Brody. So that's kind of cool, coming full circle. Since you brought him up, I mean, what are some really good memories of that? Because we lost him entirely way too soon, and I imagine, and I don't want to pry on anything, but what are some really good memories you have that maybe you haven't talked about?
So yeah, we backyard wrestled together. We came up together. I always joke that I met him when I was 13 and he was 34, which isn't completely accurate, but I was like 12 or 13 when I met him, and he was probably 19 or 20 at the time already. And yeah, we knew each other all the way through. He started training a little before me because, once again, he was ancient and I was young. And so, but yeah, we started training together. And then once I got trained and started doing shows, we started traveling together, and then we got paired together a lot in teaming up back in the day, or wrestling against each other all the time, because we were just, we were forever intertwined. So it was so crazy when I went back to do a little WWE in 2018, and they asked me if I'd mind wrestling that night. I said, sure, of course. And they said, all right, we're going to put you with the Bludgeon Brothers. And I just chuckled, like, of course, forever intertwined, and like just on a happenstance, randomly out of nowhere in Cincinnati, Ohio, I'd be wrestling him all over again. I remember he like jogged up to me when he found out. He's like, what are you doing here? I was like, wrestling you, I guess, man.
That's awesome. That's That's great. You know, and of course, I want to talk to you about WWE. You said 5 years kind of after your training. And I know it was 2008 you're with ECW. How did that come about? Just I suppose the story's gonna be like everybody else. I went down there for a trial, but can you tell me how that came about?
My story is my story is not like anybody else's. And
Okay, great.
Brody's involved with this one too, man. He's he's you can't tell my story without him. So yeah, I was working at like my 9 to 5 factory job in Rochester, New York. I was like freshly 21 years old, December 2007, and Brody called me while I'm at my job, and like he knows I'm at my jobs, and I know that he's backstage doing like extra work for WWE. He wasn't hired yet, so he calls me, and I'm like, wonder what he's got to say. So I answer, and he's like, "Hey, how fast can you get down to the arena?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. Probably pretty quick. Why? I'm right around the corner." He's like, "Okay, if you get down to the arena, you can probably wrestle Shelton Benjamin on TV tonight." So I was like, boom, gone. Just ran out of my job. I think I yelled at the boss. I was like, "I gotta go." And then I left. I just drove straight to the arena. I showed up in like work boots and like some ripped jeans and a hockey jersey with nothing but like my like some wrestling shoes and knee pads. And yeah, wound up they brought me in literally off the streets, like sight unseen. They had never seen me do anything. Bring me in the building. Jamie Noble's like grilling me, like, "You swear to God you can wrestle? You swear to God?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I swear to you, I can wrestle." He's like, "All right, all right." So he keeps telling everybody, "All right, this is the guy for Shelton tonight." And this is before they even saw him, before I ever touched the ring for them, you know? So they get me in the ring and I wrestle around with the guys who are there. You know, Brody was there, Pepper Parks or Braxton Sutter was there, Corey Graves was there doing extra work that day, Michael Tarver. So basically everybody there who was doing extra work was a bigger guy, and they needed Shelton to beat up a smaller guy. So when Brody heard that, he was like, "Hey, I might have a guy." And he called me up and I went down and I wrestled Shelton Benjamin on TV.
That's crazy. Now, did they check your ID to make sure you weren't 14?
I don't even remember. They must have though, right?
Yeah.
It all happened so fast. I remember Jamie Noble like is bringing me room to room, like just grilling me, like, "You swear to God you can wrestle?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm on this." And then yeah, I wrestled Shelton on ECW that night, and I came through the back, and Vince McMahon jumps out of his seat and he shakes my hand and he tells me what a great job I did. And then I'm walking down the line and all these guys are shaking my hand, like Ricky Steamboat and Barry Windham, and telling me how good I did. And I was just like, man, everyone's super nice here, you know, because I don't know. I was a kid. And then I got to the end of the tunnel and Johnny Ace was waiting there for me and gave me the whole, "Kid, come take a walk with me." And then, you know, told me I did a great job and they wanted to have me back next week. And it was just kind of off from there.
All from there and all from Brody. Oh, that's awesome. That's a cool story. And I did hear parts of that story as I was doing research and stuff, but hearing the whole thing together, that's awesome. Yeah, because I was saying that the age thing, I know they always, people are on the internet going, "Did you know Jeff Hardy was like, 8 years old when he wrestled or whatever?" So I thought, hey, maybe they check your thing. So from there it goes on to ECW, and I know you faced every beast that they had. Mark Henry, Kane, the great Khali. You talk about that, the big guys. I mean, that was awesome. I remember watching. It was awesome.
Yeah, once it started with Shelton, who's not really a big guy, and then it was Mark, and then it was Big Daddy V, and then it was Kane, and then it was Khali. So they just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I kind of thought it would end after Khali. I didn't have a contract. They didn't sign me to anything initially. So after I wrestled Khali, I was like, well, it can't get much bigger, right? But as far as wrestling all those gigantic guys, it's crazy because I think Big Daddy V was one of the first big guys I wrestled. And at the time, Big Daddy V was like 600 pounds. And he stood on me with both feet. And I was 135 pounds at the time. I watched the tape back and I go, how does this even, it's like a magic trick. How did he do this?
I remember on an indie show, there's a guy probably 450 pounds, and he's going to do a big splash off the apron while I'm on the concrete. And I was, when you're young and dumb and you're like, yeah, whatever. And everybody's like, you're crazy. It was like a feather. It was crazy. I was like, ugh.
I remember, it's so funny because I couldn't believe it. Big Daddy V was one of the lightest people I'd ever been in the ring with, and he was almost 600 pounds at the time. And then the next week I wrestled Kane, and Kane was so stiff. I thought after Big Daddy V, I was like, well, he's the biggest guy they got. After this, it's all gravy. First time Kane hits me, I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble.
I had a chance in December a couple of years ago, a seminar with Joe Laurinaitis, Road Warrior Animal. And I'm a huge AWA guy because I'm old and I'm in the Midwest. And I said, I got to ask you about Jerry Blackwell. And he said, Jerry Blackwell was one of the lightest guys I ever worked with. He said he picked him up one time, and I'll have to share the video with you. And he said he almost went over backwards because Blackwell was so light, he couldn't believe it. So, and Blackwell, for big guy, man, that guy's throwing drop kicks left, right, and center. I don't know how far back you go watching pro wrestling, but Jerry Blackwell, one of those big guys that was just light. What was Khali like?
Some guys from like, oh God, Khali knocked me out with the side of his hand. If you watch the tape back, I remember people were putting over how great I sold. I wasn't selling. He hit me in the top of the head with the side of his hand, which probably weighs as much as a toaster oven. He just swung it at my head, and all I saw was darkness and stars. And next thing I know, he's lifting me up in the air.
Crazy. We got a leg. I kind of cut you off on that Jerry Blackwell thing. I apologize.
Oh, you're good. I was just saying that, like, it's different eras, like Big Daddy V is from an earlier era. He was like a Memphis guy and stuff. So, when it doesn't matter if you were big, those guys are just trained light. I bet money I could have body slammed Big Daddy V if he'd have let me.
This 450 pounder, there was like I don't know how she wasn't a small girl, but in training camp, I'm like, that's impressive. It's impressive. So how long after you kind of run out of monsters there, what's the next step? Do you eventually run out and he's getting a phone call? I know that Zoom thing or a text.
There I am.
There you are. Sorry, popular guy today, I tell you. So I've received no phone calls or texts all day. I'm doing this Zoom call and my phone's like going nuts. That's how it goes. I don't know. It's just the way it is. What after you kind of return, you're doing stuff. I've seen on a lot of the people on Facebook, you're doing some seminars and stuff now, aren't you? You starting to get helping out at different indie shows?
Yeah, so at this point, I've been doing this 18 years. I helped train at the school locally here for years. And I've always kind of enjoyed teaching it and sharing the knowledge that I've built up over the years. I got a seminar coming up. If this airs a week from today, it'll be tomorrow, basically, down in Alabama. I'm doing a seminar for New South. I love when wrestling companies bring people in and they have enough young talent that's hungry and wants to learn that they can do regular seminars. Like the day before I do mine, they've got Davey Boy Smith Jr. doing a seminar, and they just had one with Johnny Swinger. So I always love that because you don't really find that a lot anymore, that there's just enough young, hungry talent that you can run seminars all the time, and people are still going to take them and want to take them and want to learn from different people.
I found, when I go to seminars with like a lot of young guys, it's like, oh, I'm a little cautious. I'm afraid to go in there and mess up. I'm like, no, that's what it's for. Let's go, like, learn. You want to, it's like anything in life. Don't be so afraid of messing up that you don't even try.
I went to the local school here, at some point recently, and a lot of the students, when I get in there, they kind of like fall off a little bit. And I said to the guy training, I was like, "Are they afraid of me?" And he's like, "I think they're afraid to mess up and look bad in front of you." And I was like, "Oh, that's such a weird mentality to have."
It is, and I always tell people, like, don't. Some people just go, "Oh yeah, I know that," and you don't really. Like, how are you ever going to learn it? You gotta go in there and experience it. Yeah.
When I was coming up, I would do any seminar. Me and Brody and a couple of the other guys who really wanted it, we would beg the promoter to bring different guys in so we could learn from them. We had to bring Chris Hero in like every couple months because we're like, yeah, bring Chris back so he can do another seminar because we'll pay for it. If it's a good seminar, I'll do it again and again and again.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just something unique. So if anybody's watching out there and young getting into it, go to these seminars, especially in the wake of what we've experienced this last year. Go to your shows anyway, but go learn. Everybody's rusty. Everybody's a little bit rusty, and the old adage, once you think you know it all, I mean, you definitely don't, especially in this business. So, besides Chris Hero, what would be some of your favorite seminars or most memorable that you've been to?
So Chris Hero is always my favorite. I did Chris Hero seminars like even in the last couple of years, and he was like, "You don't have to keep paying for these seminars." And I'm like, no, I every time I learn more, even at this point, I'm 18 years in, but even at 18 years in, I'll still learn, and I still like to learn. I remember early on a Colt Cabana seminar, like, really opened my eyes about what professional wrestling psychology was. And it was, I didn't know what to expect going into it. And I remember leaving it with just this whole new outlook. It was one of those like epiphany wow moments, and you wouldn't think that out of like especially, this is probably like 15 years ago I did this seminar with Colt, but 15 years ago Colt Cabana already had the understanding to teach it to an entire room of people in a way that I completely understood, and it blew my mind.
Right. As with all things in coaching too, sometimes somebody could have been telling you that for 100 years, and somebody just twists those words around or says it just where it clicks, and you're like, that's what I always tell people, whether it's wrestling, football, or whatever. Like, I don't care if you don't understand it from me, and if somebody else on the coaching staff gets it to you, it's like whatever it takes just to click. We all learn a little bit differently.
Sure if I lost you.
Oh no, I can still see you. You're paused. Are you there?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, I just watched you and fast forward, like catch up, like blah, 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 blah.
You know what happens on Zoom, just a little behind the scenes, is while we're recording this, somehow in the middle between you and I and any delays or lags, it syncs up in the video, and then it looks like I'm just talking over top of you and being a very rude host. So it'll work out. So, and I want to be very respectful of your time and everybody watching this. Some of the questions that I'm thinking as I'm going here, what's some of the best advice that you've received in your 18 years? Can you like one? You don't have to. I know you probably got a lot, but anything that kind of stands out.
I'm trying to think. I don't know. I feel like guys always hear like those same pieces of advice that don't really like you could hear this, like you were just saying, like finally someone will say it in like the right way, and it clicks with you. Like guys are told to like do less. Like, oh, you're doing too much, do less. But it's really get more out of the little things is really should be the message. It's not to do less. You should never do less. That's like the silliest piece of advice ever, but you hear it all the time. But it's actually kind of more to like do like get more out of the littler things, you know?
I always hear, slow down. And if you think you're going too slow, slow it down even more, stuff like that. Last couple questions, because I want to, make sure that I get these good ones here. As a wrestling travel company, we bring fans from around the world. We're located in England. I do the North American operations, but we bring fans to all their greatest events. And since we're based out of the UK, have you gotten a chance? Where in the world have you gotten a chance to wrestle? Have you been over to the UK? Any other countries?
So I went to the UK with WWE when I was employed there, and they brought me over last minute. So they didn't have any of my paperwork in order. So I'm like stuck at immigration. Like when you get over the border, they're like, yeah, you don't have any papers, go sit down. So I'm sitting waiting, and I get a tap on my shoulder, and it's Shawn Michaels. And he's like, hey, what's going on? I was like, it's like a paperwork thing, I guess. They don't have my stuff. I was just put on this show last minute. He's like, all right, hold on. So he walks up there, and I see him motioning back to me. And then he just walks over to me. He's like, just walk through with me. You'll be fine. So I was like, all right, cool. So I go through with Shawn Michaels, and then it's just me and him. And I have an hour-and-a-half long car ride, just me and Shawn Michaels through London, England.
Oh, and how was that? You guys just shooting the breeze, or
just shooting the breeze? He couldn't have been nicer. He couldn't have been cooler. He was like, he's like, give me the Colin Delaney story. Tell me it all. He's like, I want to hear it. And I remember it was one of the first times that it really sunk in what I was doing, because I told him the story, and he's like, you never went to developmental? I said, no. He's like, do you know how many wrestlers on this roster never went to developmental? I was like, I don't know. And he's like, it's you, it's me, it's The Undertaker, it's Ric Flair. I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, I guess you're right. There probably is like 10 guys on the roster, and they're all like legend Hall of Famers and me.
Legendary. Yeah, good company to keep. What's difference? The crowd over in the UK, very boisterous, right? What have you noticed the difference from your internally?
So when I watch now, like when I watch NXT UK, or when I watch, Progress or one of the shows going on over there, when I catch any of that, yeah, you notice it right away. You're like, whoa. But I mean, back when I was 21 and doing WWE, I couldn't even tell you if there was a crowd there or not. I was just, in over my head, just doing what I could to stay alive.
Yeah, I can picture that. As a young kid over there, just as a podcast or an interview show, this is that question where you're gonna go, geez, I don't know, or you're gonna go, yeah, I've got something for you. I'm always told I need to try to get something buzzworthy or some kind of crazy story that maybe you haven't told before. So instead of being a journalist and crafting my way to that, I decided I'm just gonna ask, you got any cool story or something maybe you haven't shared, or some crazy story that people will go, hey, I gotta check this story out on the lockdown sessions? And it so freezes up right now, doesn't it? Of course. Shit. Are you there? Okay, you're muted. We got to unmute you.
There we go.
There we go.
How's that?
Holy cow! It lost you and it brought back on the technology. We'll finish up here, but
Yeah.
Did my last question come through, or did I automatically stop?
No. So you started your question, and you prefaced it by letting me know that this is a thing coming, and then it just kind of
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna say it very quickly and I'm gonna say this is one of those ones you might not have, but I always get asked, when you do your interviews, try to get something buzzworthy or some type of crazy story. And I don't have that creative journalistic way to get there. So I'm just gonna point blank ask, you got anything, maybe a story you haven't told or something really quick that you could give me? And then people will be like, I gotta listen to this interview.
Man. So I don't know.
Damn it.
It's I wish I need to keep one out the top of my head. You go through those stories in your head and you're like, I don't want to. So if it's putting egg on my own face, I'd be like, yeah, I'll just throw this one out there. But when it involves other people, I'm like,
oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I never want to get anybody in trouble or implicate anyone. I just thought maybe a fun
That's
story.
Me too. I'm like, oh, I got this story, and then I'm like, that person would probably be pretty pissed if I just threw this one out there. I don't really, I can't on the spot. I don't have anything that wouldn't get somebody that's not me in trouble.
So what I'll do is I'll do a preview of me asking that question and be like, stay tuned to see what Colin Delaney's answer is, and then they'll just be like, I'm never listening to this guy's podcast again. This guy's terrible. So, final. So I know you're doing a seminar in Alabama. I'll change gears here. How has, since we're called the lockdown sessions, did you have a big time off like everybody? New York is tough, right? There's nothing's going for as far as pro wrestling.
Yeah, nothing's going. I did a little bit of wrestling during the summer when things were kind of going in other states. I did some stuff in Indiana and a little bit outside and other places, but not a whole lot. It's definitely the longest I've been without wrestling in the 18 years I've been doing this. This upcoming weekend of shows down in Alabama is going to be my first weekend back since October, I think. Yeah, I had stuff in October that I did, and then I had, from once weather started to turn cold, everything canceled again. I had some shows booked in November that just got tossed out the window, and so yeah, it's been tough just trying to keep busy, keep my mind sane during this crazy time. And I'm hoping that now that weather's going to get to turning again, that maybe even with everything not necessarily right yet, that we can at least start squeaking out some more shows.
Yeah, it'd be awesome, because that Northeast, it's a hotbed for pro wrestling, and just everybody I know out there, Pennsylvania, New York, going in, it's just so tough. So my final question is my favorite question to ask, and hopefully your favorite one to answer. I want everybody watching this, how can they keep track of Colin Delaney? Any social media, if they want to order merch, if they want to support you, where can the fans get a hold of you or follow you?
So I'm probably most active on Twitter. I'm not a social media guy, but I pop on Twitter. I throw my things out there, so you can keep track of it on there. It's @extremelycute. I got on the Twitter game pretty early, so names like @extremelycute were still available. I'm on Instagram @extremelycolin. I do have a Pro Wrestling Tees store. If you wanted to hop on Pro Wrestling Tees /Colin Delaney, ProWrestlingTees.com/Colin Delaney. You can grab a couple shirts there. I have other designs available, and you can, I'm sure I've advertised them on Twitter and Instagram. So if you click on either of those, you should be able to find them pretty quick.
We got to get you hooked up with my buddies over at Wrestle Merch Central in London and get you a Colin Delaney store over in the UK.
For all my British friends.
Yeah, all your British friends. So, hey, man, I really want to say thanks a lot. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Dude, I'm the worst with technology. It is not your fault. If anything, it's definitely mine, because I don't know what I'm doing.
Awesome. And then I'm going to promise everybody watching that if Colin thinks of some story that doesn't put egg on anybody else's face, you need to be following him on Twitter, because he'll let you know there. So
if I come up with a random weird story, if something pops in my head that won't get anybody in trouble, I will video record it and I'll send it to you.
That's all I can ask for, man. Thank you so much. for
problem, dude.
joining us today, Colin.